Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lord and Saviour, with the second out of 3 parts of the exploration of the world of future darkness, my Cybervamp series. Now what is it? Well, you can check out a fuller description of all of that in the first part of this, which is going to appear on a card up there, or check out the playlist at the end of the video. You had a strange collaboration between the material found in Cyberpunk 2020. Lovely stuff. And Vampire the Masquerade of the World of Darkness. Combining the two together, we get the World of Future Darkness. The first part explored what it is and how the clans and whatnot operate in Cyberpunk's 2020, and this part's going to be focusing on the themes and storytelling, as well as some exciting NPCs that you can add to your game. And in the third part, we're going to be doing some combat, which, as I said in the first part, we'll be using Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, because the homebrew write-up thing was written with 2nd edition in mind, I'm guessing, given the year that it came out, and as I do not have that, I'm using the closest thing to hand, which just so happened to be, in my hand, Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition. Lovely stuff. And without further ado, I think we should just get straight into this rather disappointingly short chronicle write-up thing. So, if we just transition over with these fancy effects that I've just done, wowzers, I'm actually using OBS as it was intended. You can see that once more we have a fairly inconsistent quality. You've got the nice border things around the edges, you've got the classic 2nd edition sort of style illustrations, a lot more varied than what you would find with Vampire, usually. You've got some ads there, more NPCs, and then it goes on to the next thing. And we're just going to go back to the beginning and have a look at this write-up and have a bit of a conversation and see Chronicles in Night City. Probably going to skip bits as well because I want you to read this at your own time. And also, as you can probably see, the print is not fantastic, unfortunately. The scan, I should say. The scan is not fantastic. So we're going to be tripping up on some words here, so cope. Because I'm going to have to endure. Night City is a natural location for a chronicle, which, for the cyberpunk enthusiast, is like the de facto city. Like, everything revolves around this city in this universe. The city has it all: wealth, power, corruption, poverty, and desperation. The system of haves and have-nots have become so entrenched that those outside are simultaneously at an advantage and at a disadvantage. For those inside the system, everything comes easy. Everything comes easy. The companies sponsor their employees from the cradle to the grave. Medical care, housing and transportation are all available from the corporations, of course, a very classic cyberpunk theme. For those on the outside, it's much rougher. Boosters are everywhere, which are gangs that are basically up to their fucking titties in cyberware and whatnot. It's difficult to walk around the street without being a witness or a victim to crime. Walking across the city can be a story in of itself, onto itself. As it described there, Night City is an incredibly violent city. There's actually, in the south, a whole part of the city called the Combat Zone, which is completely lawless, where just crime happens all the time. And in fact, in the Night City Sourcebook, which is up there somewhere, my copy at least is up there, it's not like the only one that's up there, but in the Night City Sourcebook, it goes through in great detail like every single part of the city until it gets to the combat zone, where it basically goes, do whatever the fuck you want, here's some encounters, which really highlights in a very simple way just how screwed up it is when you can plug into data terms and whatnot and like research and like scan for anything that you want, but it doesn't have anything on anything that constitutes in the combat zone. It's kind of frightening at the same time. The advantage comes from the skills of those from the outside. The Cyberpunk or Edge Runner, just a synonym, possess many abilities that the corps can use. Even better, those resources don't have any official connection to them. They hire those people for pittance and send them on their jobs. If they don't come back, plausible them on their jobs. Plausible on their jobs? Whatever. If they don't come back, plausible deniability is the standard way of looking at things, as I said. Awful print and I'm getting confused. The division between the Anarchs and the Camera is extremely marked in this city. There is a physical separation between downtown and the combat zone. Edge running is quite a valid occupation for the young Anarchs. which kind of gears toward what the de facto World of Future Darkness game will entail. And I've just noticed, in the previous theme, the World of Future Darkness was a alright colour, but now we've just got the black and white here, which is an interesting contrast, a little disappointing. So, the general theme, mood, background, and history, the first two in particular are going to be your main ports of calls here. The overall theme for such a chronicle should be including 3 basic concepts. Life is fast, the world is moving at hypersonic speeds. The kindred and kind both have difficulty keeping up, let alone staying on the edge. If you think they have had too much to breathe freely, drop something on them. Don't let them slow down on enough to think, which makes sense, you know, especially with the bit on the combat zone I just mentioned. It's like hitting you all the time, like very little time for rest, especially for vampires and anarchs who are constantly, you know, on the move. They're doing things, and just it's more of a case of like kill and be killed sort of mentality in the city as a mortal, and I suspect as a vampire that's quite a lot extra to deal with as well, especially at night, especially if you're in the combat zone and for whatever reason you decide to hunker down for the day and like somebody comes up and like fucks about with you in one way or another. So an added level of fear that not many people would have to think about. Life is lonely. The characters have only themselves and said friends to rely on. The elders don't care if they live or die as long as the masquerade stays in place. The corpse don't care, just don't leave any evidence leading back to them. If anyone doesn't notice you, it's probably because they are an easy profit. They could be anything from a spare organ or cyber parts to the bounty on your head, which is very true. I have to say this is presented very simplistically, because I'm assuming that this was written for World of Darkness fans who had the idea of like, oh, what would vampire be like in the future? And it obviously uses the cyberpunk mentality to push that forward, because as we discussed previously, it's a very natural fit between the two of them. And it'd be nice if it could have been expanded a bit more here, but then again, if you want more information about that, just fucking buy the Cyberpunk book and any of its source materials, or watch any film of the cyberpunk genre. But it's a decent intro, but it would be nice just to have a bit more variety, something that makes it a bit more vampiric rather than generic. That said, it is good if it's like your first introduction into the cyberpunk genre, so you know, it has its pros and cons. And the third thing, life is cheap. The players must feel as if the only value their lives have is what they attach to it. Which, yeah, if it's not on your back, like, it's a free game. If it's not with your friends, fellow edge runners, then, you know, you're all in this to get... Sorry. Background. There's an excellent sourcebook for Night City published by, naturally, Aurtakis Games. This background will give you an idea how to integrate maneuvers of the Kindred into the game, which, I have to say, is disappointing. It doesn't say what the book is, though. I mean, I've just told you, but it doesn't take long for anybody to Google Sourcebook for Night City, but it would have been nice if that was expanded a bit more, to be honest. And we've just skipped a whole section. Mood. Chaos reigns. Events occur constantly, sometimes for no apparent reason. Play up the unpredictability and problems of the city in 2020. Remember, this is the future, and it ain't pretty. Every chance you get, show the players the darker side of the city. The latest Voodoo Boy killing, the Voodoo Boy being a gang in Night City. You may recognise that, actually, if you've played Cyberpunk 2077 or 2077 to be more hip with it. God, that is the whitest thing I have done. Glossing over that. So 2077 has the Voodoo Boys as like a proper Haitian gang that are like connecting their voodoo and voodoo beliefs and etc. with net running. In 2020, they're a bunch of stuck-up middle-class white boys appropriating their culture that are supposed to be hated and despised. And this has been addressed. I believe there was a slight controversy that was over this. And they were meant to be, like, hateable and, like, people supposed to scold them for their behaviour sort of thing. So, yeah, take that what you will, you know, you can give and take sort of thing. The last hostile takeover or the occasional gunfight, which takes place every 10 minutes if you live in the combat zone, as I discussed a moment ago. These are desperate times. The world is ending and humanity is plunging the earth into a mere pollution of destruction. What can a few people do, especially when they're having a hard time just surviving, which is a very good point to highlight. First of all, you've got Vampire with the whole Gehenna apocalypse theme, which, you can integrate however you please. And also, it's a very dystopian theme, cyberpunk. Like, the motto of low life, high tech. It's very much the emphasis on the genre is what makes it stand out more from sci-fi, where it's like super rich, like exploring the space and galaxy sort of thing. Sure, Cyberpunk 2020, 45 and 77 does have like a space element to it, but it's more like there's some space stations and satellites that just orbit the Earth that are like corporations like fighting each other, like a whole space war thing that's going on. And the idea that it's all, you're not superheroes, you're not trying to save the world, you're trying to save your own personal world, you know, fighting against your own fight against corporations that, quite frankly, you're never going to win, but it's just you're surviving, you're just trying to get through the next day or night, as if you are a vampire. So let's talk about the history a bit. When Richard's Night project began attracting corporate attention and funding, it also gained the attention of some of the few kindred. Several of those involved felt that it could work. They would have a city free of anarch troubles and other similar difficulties. Richard Knight is the one who created Night City, and as this book may explore, he was killed by the Mafia, essentially. The Venture and Giovanni were the primary movers behind several of the megacorps, although the Tremere were not far behind, and the Toreadors spotted the possibility of a new artistic community. Many of them moved in, and there's a bit more of their write-ups here, which again, you can check up the first part of that to learn more. By 1995, Knight was secured by the Giovanni clan and quickly became one of their ghouls. Sorry, I stopped then. I haven't read this before. I actually went into this as a surprise sort of thing. I feel like an honest reaction sort of thing. And I hate this thing of, like, nothing big can happen in the world of darkness if it's not pushed forward by a vampire, werewolf, or whatever. Given what I just said about the Mafia, it kind of makes sense about how things went wrong if I'm going in this thinking of the way it's going to go in, but God, that's frustrating. The Venture soon discovered this and began financing attempts on his life to remove him in 1998. The Assamite succeeded, so many others failed. Okay, so this was actually an Assamite thing. Wow, that was overly convoluted. It would have been nice if it was just like the humans just did the human things, but you know, Vampire, the Jihad, the big chess game that they're all playing. I mean, it's interesting that I just wanted them to... I just had a go with not wanting to expand it a bit more, and I'm now criticising them for expanding it more. You're expanding it wrong, in my personal opinion. It's weird that it would have been nice if like the mood and the background of the city had more of a vampire feel, but not to the point where Night City came about because of vampire manipulation. Anyway, over the next 7 years, the struggles for power were chaotic as various Canaanites maneuvered their pawns into position. Some had only had them die, others lost them to the opposing clans. As if they were not enough, several anarchs moved in to take advantage of the prime new feeding grounds. At the end of this period, the mob and their kindred leader, the bourgeois... What the fuck does that say? Cosleggiore Gurdai Salvatore, effectively ruled Night City. Crime escalated, the Sabbat even made an attempt to gain control during this time and failed miserably against the organisation of the Mafia. Interesting that the Sabbat, the vampires, were unable to have some pushback against the Mafia, implying that the Giovanni influence is particularly strong in Night City, or at least it was at this point. After 4 years of kindred and mortal violence, the Venture and the Giovanni moved in and destroyed the mob's power base. Okay. So the Camarilla and Giovanni succeeded where the Sabbat failed. But the Giovanni control the mob. So it's quite interesting to see them have that influence. I feel this is feeling a little rushed to me at this point. Make no mistake, the two clans had no intention to cement an alliance. They were simply responding to what they considered to be an untenable situation. Guido Salvatore was slain in his haven by a squad of highly trained ghouls sent by Carlo Giovanni. Since that time, no Canaanite has moved in to take control of the mob, although Don Cavarali, or however that name's pronounced, is probably planning some special surprise for the near future. Plot hooks for you to use, I'm sure. At the end of the war, the corporations cooperated in setting up a city government. The Venture set up a mayor, and the Giovanni, by their own agreement, did not interfere openly, which is referring, more openly than the previous thing, the promise of 1528, which I like. You know, some of that vampire integration there, which that's the sort of thing that I wanted. It was a bit more subtle, like placing their pawns in place rather than directing key figures. Because, you know, shit hits the fan pretty quickly. The Anarchs survived mostly unscathed, mostly due to their retreat into the combat zone 6 years earlier. So, going back to what I said a moment ago, if you are an Anarch playing this, which seems to be like the main focus here, you're going to be in the combat zone for quite a bit, so that's going to make hunkering down in a haven, or the lack of thereof, extremely difficult. So for the bit of this read-up, I'm actually going to conclude by reading the current state of affairs, and then we're going to have a look at some of these NPCs and have a look how they're presented and whatnot. The current state of affairs: the Venture and the Giovanni maintained their own competition on the Megacorp front, although they have been fighting a secret war for several years now. This condition could easily devolve into open warfare, devastating Night City. The Anarchs maintain their control of the combat zone. Control is a very interesting word here. Although this is contested more by the Mortal Games more than other clans, most of whom have no interest in such a hellhole. The Mortal Society is a powder keg. The homeless and disenfranchised continually suffer abuse and neglect from the government and the megacorps. So kind of what I expected, like same vampire controlling shit, fighting with the mortals, but with just a little sensitive powder keg sort of situation here. And we're just going to move forward a bit now and talking a bit about some of the kindred. Not too much though, because I want some information for you to have a little ponder on. We have the Carlo Giovanni, who is this disgruntled looking person here. If you've read any Vampire the Masquerade Sourcebook before, you'll recognise how a lot of this set out. It's not like a full-blown character sheet like it did with first edition. Second edition onwards started presenting them in like this list sort of thing. So if we have a look at Carlo, we've got the clan, the sire, the nature and demeanour, his generation, his embrace, age, and all the various different pieces, how the blood points, willpower. Interesting that we've got someone with willpower of 9. Humanity 5, I would have thought that would have been a bit lower. And second and revised edition had role-playing hints, which I thought was always very useful. So role-playing hints, always be personable even with those who you dislike. It's easier to work with a possible friend than a potential enemy, even if you're not the one who is considering the friendship. You've got the haven, you've got the influence. Talks, you know, the thing over the clan, it expands a bit more. It would have been interesting to see if it did what Chicago by Night did, where, I don't know if Chicago by Night 2nd edition came out before this, but 1st edition was certainly around, where it had like the secrets and the influence bit, like an A to Z sort of thing, or A to F as I think it uses, just so you know they know how much of Night City they are aware and control of. Because if they're having this thing where the Giovanni and the Venture are the ones that have everything wrapped around their finger, so to speak, it would have been interesting to see, like, on a scale, like, how much they actually know. But the fact that you've got, like, the influence written here, Carl effectively controls through the clan, Euro business machines, Petrochem, and the World News Services in Night City. 2 of them were among the first to pour money into Richard Knight's coffers. Okay, so it mentions those very heavy hitters in Night City, particularly Petrochem, rather, and the World News Service. Like, again, I find that a bit irritating that they're the ones that like put in the strings, as it were, you know, the much bigger things. Because it doesn't have to be a vampire is ruling every single asset and facet, I guess. But, you know, it'd be nice just to have that little thing there so you don't have to read up everything. You can just see, like, A and then the expanded things if need be. We've got this clown here from the Bozos, which are actually one of my favourite gangs in Night City. They appear as clowns. And they have, like, surgery done to make them look themselves as such, including their feet, so they're big, long, red clown shoes sort of thing, but they're not actual shoes. Chucko, as his friends called him, was a bozo on the edge. He joined the game because he liked playing practical jokes, even if a few of his jokes were even more than a little sadistic. He never seriously hurt anyone, however. This would probably have lasted until he died or left the game, save for the fact that one of his better jokes gained the attention of Danny Covington. Danny was a Malkavian. Of course, the crazy clown was a crazy Malkavian who saw a psychotic soul waiting to bloom, and he was just the cook to water it. It's kind of what I was expecting, to be honest. Like 11th generation. Obviously, the stats and whatnot are different because you've got, like, again, with a younger kindred. We've got some stats with the Giovanni, which is 6th, interestingly enough. And I'm not going to go through all of them because you can just search them up in your own time. I love some of these artworks. So we've got this individual here who's Shark, if I'm marrying that up correctly. Some of these ads here as well. Like, the attention to detail, it feels like a Vampire the Masquerade product for sure. But it looks different enough to stand out, because obviously you've got like the very anarchy sort of like cyberware themes. Yeah, so I do wish this was a bit longer, unfortunately, but this is what we get. So if you do like that and you want to try and expand your World of Darkness library, you can check those various links out in the description below, where I have provided all 3 magazines, because the third part of this talks about, like, well, it's actually a chronicle that you can run in Night City using the different themes that we have discussed. Which I'm not going to cover because I feel that's warranted a much more in-depth review that I don't think that this sort of retrospective, as it were, is going to cover. So if you want a review on that, do let me know in the comments below. Check out the magazines in question in the description below, as well as the other various vampire and cyberpunk books in the description below. You purchase it with those links, I'm an affiliate, so I get some of the money back, so I'm able to provide more vampire and possibly cyberpunk material, depending if there's a lot of interest in that. Well, I'm going to do it anyway, but whether it's on this channel or a separate one is a different matter entirely. But I'd still need the material in order to do that, so I still need the financial support and the emotional support as well. Like, subscribe, purchase things, follow me on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, Jaw the Law by Night Discord server. It's mainly a World of Darkness server, but we do have a miscellaneous TTRPG channel, so if you want to talk about Cyberpunk there, by all means you can come along and do that. It's a very safe and welcoming community, filled with a diverse and queer cast of lovely individuals, no edition wars for the most part, and the dankest memes you can find in Vampire the Masquerade, which is just pure bliss. And next time, the third and final part where we get to explore some combat and some solo roleplay using Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition. Till next time, Chooms, farewell.